Greetings, June Allen here. Psychotherapist, consultant. Just really grateful to be on here today to be sharing some support around suicide in the Black community. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm going to be doing the live stream with another fellow therapist, friend and colleague, Yvonne J. Douglas. So when she comes into the live, obviously we'll join. So for those of you that don't know me, I am a therapist, I'm a coach, I'm also a business consultant, and I basically do a lot of work. I mainly support Black women around the mother wound. We do a lot of work around that, self-care, self-love, all of that good stuff. Racial trauma, I tend to deal with a lot of that. In my practice, I've got a private practice and I've also got a mastermind. And I absolutely love what I do. I know how important it is to be a Black woman and to be serving the community. And actually this session that I'm going to be doing with you today is going to be proof that of how important it is for us to be doing this work. But before we really get into it, I'm just going to give you I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So, so I have just what have we got in a minute. So Thursday, I'm currently doing a group therapy session on Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. London time, and that's where we talk about the link between race, gender, and how that impacts our money behaviours. And we're also using this book, The Black Woman Millionaire, as a way to anchor the conversations. So we're not just reading the book through, we're taking pieces of it, piece by piece, and we're breaking the conversation down. So if you're struggling with any money issues, maybe you've been overspending too much over the Christmas period, maybe you overspend genuinely and you don't, you're not very good with money, or maybe you have a lot of fear around money. If you've got money trauma, if you were raised in a home where there was a lot of money trauma and stuff like that, we talk about all of those things, and we talk about the impact that race, whether it's historical or current, how all of those things have an impact on our money behaviour. So if you're interested in joining me for that class, you can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net, and you can get all the information about how to join there. So the other piece of housekeeping that I have is that I also have like a Black Woman's Wellness Guide, a Sacred Sister Wellness Guide, and there's loads of stuff in there about how to review your year of wellness. There's loads of journal prompts and stuff in there. There's a really nice poster with the 12 spiritual laws of the universe in there, which you can print off and have up as a guide for living over the next year. There's loads of recommendations as well, my favourite books that you can use for your wellness journey and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that as well, you can click the link in my bio and you can download the book. Is absolutely free. Okay, so let me just see. So Yvonne's I've just said yes, I'm on. Okay, yes, live. Okay, so Yvonne's just messaged me, so she's going to be joining us in a minute. If there's anything that I share about today's topic, then you can you can send me a DM. Sorry, my brain's I'm trying to focus on Yvonne and actually trying to keep the live going. So you can either you can send me a DM, or you can join me. You can email me info@yardofgreatness.com. Right. So let's get Yvonne on now, because my brain's going and I'm trying to focus on too many different things. I'm getting older and my menopause brain doesn't want to work with it. So okay, so let's see what's happening now. I don't know if she's... she's telling me to invite her. Okay, so how do I invite her now? So let me just see. Okay, invite to join at Yvonne. Oh, there she is. Yvonne. All right, so apologize, family. Okay, so that's it. All right, just invited. All right, cool. So we can get. There she is. There she
Hi.
is. Hello.
Hello.
I was just having a moment. My menopause brain was trying to do two things at once. So, for those of you that don't know Yvonne, she is a very respected and esteemed colleague and fellow therapist. And as soon as I thought about doing this, talking about this topic, I just thought, okay, let me just see if Yvonne's free to talk about it. So, Yvonne, do you want to just introduce yourself to everyone, so that, and then we'll jump in and get started.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Yvonne J. Douglas. I also go by the name of the Starseed Alchemist. I am a therapist. I'm a sacred celebrant, high priestess, shamanic practitioner, healer by birth, author, and I talk about the shadow work all the time. And I think some people make it on people's nerves, but I don't care.
Listen, it needs to be done, and
It
actually,
has to be.
the healing work is not just all the fluffy self-care. Oh yeah,
Nope.
but it's actually talking about doing the
Yep.
show. And actually, this topic today is actually part of that conversation, is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. No, so it's great to have you on. So should we dive in? Should we dive
let's
in?
let's dive in.
Okay, so I thought it might be quite interesting just to talk about the stigma.
Mm,
Let's talk about the stigma of suicide in the Black community. I know that there's almost this thing about, Black people don't do that. We don't do that,
mm-hmm,
you know.
mm-hmm.
So I think it creates a lot of shame. People don't really want to talk about even having those thoughts because there's a lot of shame, I think, attached to it, that we're all
Yeah,
supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be magical
yeah,
and all the rest of it. And
yes,
it's hard for people to actually be honest about how they feel.
absolutely. I think that um sorry, I'm just inviting some people.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right, while you're doing that, I'll talk about my experience actually with it,
go
because,
on.
I can be really transparent. So there's been many times in my life
Likewise.
I have felt suicidal,
Yeah.
especially, early on in recovery when I first started doing my healing work and I first went to
Mm,
therapy.
mm-hmm.
And I found it so difficult. And I think this whole thing about Black women is supposed to be strong. And I felt ashamed. I felt ashamed of how I
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
felt,
mm-hmm.
because I just thought, people are going to think I'm being silly. And, there's this whole thing about, oh, what have you got to be depressed about? You've got a roof over your head and food in your belly. What have you got to be depressed about? Why do
Yeah,
you feel like that?
yeah,
And, for me, it was a very complex conversation. But I
yes.
knew, because of the trauma that I had around my family dynamics, the pain that was in my family, I couldn't go to them and talk and say, this is how I'm feeling. I
Mm,
couldn't talk to
mm,
them about it. I couldn't.
absolutely.
I didn't feel safe talking to any Black people about it, to be honest with you,
Right,
because I
right.
had
Yeah,
so much of my own internalized racial trauma
yeah,
that
yeah.
I couldn't talk to other Black people about it at the time. It's only when
Right.
I'd been in therapy quite a while, and I'd been in recovery, and I'd been to loads of meetings and stuff like that, and heard other people talking about it, that I thought, you know what, I sometimes feel like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
sometimes feel like that. Um, and yeah, I've called Samaritans like loads of times. I've called Samaritans loads of times, and what I found helpful about the Samaritans, actually, and this actually helped with the shame, is that it's anonymous. It's anonymous.
yeah,
They didn't ask me
yeah.
what my name is or anything like that. And sometimes I
Mm,
would just phone them up. Sometimes it would take me 2 or 3 goes before I actually said anything. And as soon as I found the courage to open my mouth, I just would sob. I would just weep,
yeah, yeah.
and then I would say thank you and put the phone down.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes I didn't even get into conversation with them about it. I just had to sit. I just needed someone to sit with me.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it is. You just need someone to hold that safe space for you, that you do feel safe
Yeah.
um, to talk about, or to just express in whichever way you need to how you're feeling inside. And this feeling of suicide, it's very, very deep. And I'm going to be transparent. I've actually attempted suicide twice in my
Oh, wow.
life
I didn't know
when I was
that.
in my 20s, because deep down there was just something. really, really sad within me that I couldn't access. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to live. And you know, luckily I had sort of like family support, but there were comments around, or you know, what is wrong? Why are you so depressed? And you know, this is a cry for help and all that kind of stuff. I got. Yeah, I had my stomach pumped once in the hospital, and then so it wasn't. I suppose it wasn't until I started my healing journey through therapy at age 27, that's when things really started to change. And those thoughts of suicide, or the feeling of wanting to not live, they went, because I started to unearth all the stuff that was embedded in my psyche, all the trauma. So much trauma has been released over the past 30 years or so. So this is what people need to start doing, really.
No, thank you for sharing that. It was really, really powerful. Yeah, so it was, thank you for sharing that. And just kind of on top of what you just kind of on top of what you were just saying, I actually do believe there's a spectrum, actually, because you know, when I'm working with clients that are suicidal, you know, one of the things I always say to them is it that you actually don't want to live, or is it that you just want the pain to stop? Because they're two very different things.
Absolutely.
You know, they're two very different things. And a lot of times, you know, even just asking that question, it kind of makes them think, oh, well, actually, I don't actually want to die. I just don't know how to, I can't hold the pain anymore. I don't know what to do with all the pain. And I think that's what it's about. And I think because there is so much stigma in the community, and a lot of shame attached to it, and thinking that we do have to be strong. And you know, if there's a culture there is a culture in the community, in the Black community anyway, about not talking about your feelings.
Absolutely.
You know, stop being emotional and trying to shut people down like that. There isn't always a space. There isn't always a space for us as a community to be able to have honest conversations. And what's also interesting is, since the what should we call it, the guy in the what's his name? Is it Stephen Switch? Stephen Switch, isn't it? The guy in America, the DJ that took his own life. Because of all the stuff that was going on, there's a lot of stuff on social media about people saying, you know, check on your friends and all of that kind of stuff. But I always think to myself, it's easy to say check on your friends, but how would people actually respond to somebody that said, okay, well, you're checking in on me, I'm actually feeling suicidal. So then what are you going to do? What does the friend do? People can't hold that space because of that culture of, you know, not being able to hold space for other people, or not being in touch with your feelings. So if you do check in on your strong friends, and your strong friends say, actually, I'm not doing too good, I don't want to live anymore, I want to harm myself or whatever, then you know, it's difficult for that. It might be difficult for that person asking the question,
definitely,
you know, to hold that space.
And I think the answer is that if we all take responsibility for ourselves and our healing, and become very comfortable with our own emotions,
exactly,
then you're in a place to hold space. A lot of people can't hold space because they can't even hold space for themselves.
And that's the issue. So this it's almost like a fantasy of like, oh, checking on your friends. But if you can't if you're not very good holding your own emotions, if you're that person that's always trying to be the strong one, if you're that person that's telling people stop being so emotional, then you're not really in a position to be able to check on your strong friends, because you can't even have space for yourself.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't have space for yourself. So you know, and the other thing that's kind of difficult, again, but just going back to what we were saying about the community, the stigma in the community, it's understandable why, in a sense, why we're in the position that we're in, because you know, there are numerous reports that have been done about the racism in the NHS and stuff like that. And you know, I've actually collected some statistics that look really quite shocking, to be honest with you. And you know, Black men are at higher risk than Black women of taking their life. Black people are 40% more likely to get treatment via the police or the criminal justice system Okay, 40% more likely. Okay,
That's
they're less likely to be referred for therapy via their doctor. Okay, and they're 4 times more likely to be sectioned than white people.
right.
So
That's a
I've
lot.
worked with clients that have been very distressed, not psychotic or anything, but been very, very distressed
Oh,
about
yes,
not
likewise.
wanting to go to their GP or not wanting to
Mm,
go via the
mm,
NHS because they don't, they're scared that they're going to get sectioned, or they're worried about how they're going to be treated. So this kind of like adds another layer to the conversation
definitely.
around, oh well, don't be, we don't want to deal with it within ourselves, because if we have to go and get help, it's not
Yeah,
safe.
it's not safe. Yeah, yeah. It is. That is a really sad state of affairs. The
Yeah.
system doesn't help to a degree, and so it is about, okay, as a community, let's start taking responsibility and support, so that we can be in a position to support one another. you
Yeah.
know and I know that we're both on the Black and Asian Therapists Network, aren't we?
Yes.
Which is
Great resource.
it's a really good resource. I always point people towards there, um, to search for a therapist, and they've even got a holistic section as well now. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of
Yes.
like, there's no excuses. There's help out there, and
Yeah.
people do have to just stop feeding into the narrative that it's a weakness to ask for help. Stop
Mm.
feeding into the narrative that we have to sweep things under the carpet and, oh, Black people don't do counselling. It's a nonsense.
White
That's
is
a
for white
nonsense.
people. Yeah.
No, it's not. Do you know what? It's more for us than them, actually, because of the racial trauma, because of the system that we've been living in, because of the transgenerational trauma that we hold in our psyche and in our DNA. We
Yeah.
need it more than any other race, I would say.
Mm. Well, this is the reason I wanted to be a therapist, actually, because when I first started my journey in recovery, recovery, 12-step recovery is very white middle class, very white
Yeah.
middle class. And this is one of the things that frustrated me about the whole process. It's like there was nothing in there that no one was really having conversations about the link between race and recovery and addiction and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I started talking about it a lot more, and I've done I did a lot of service in recovery, helped set up meetings. If you
Yeah.
anyone that's struggling with anything like that now, if you Google, people of color in recovery, you will find a lot of stuff now. Okay, you will find
Okay,
a
that's
lot
really good.
now. And as a result of me being in recovery and going into therapy and stuff like that, that's why I wanted to train, because I just thought a lot of therapists are not culturally competent. Yeah, a lot of therapists are not culturally competent. Even dare I say, even the black ones, even some of the black ones. And the reason for that is because the training is not always sufficient.
No, it doesn't
Training
cover.
is it doesn't cover it, not in any depth.
Mm, mm.
And because
Yeah.
it's only because I read a load of books and I was very interested in it, and I became almost obsessed with, I'm still quite obsessed with it, reading books about cultural trauma. Next year I'm going to be doing another training thing with Reshma Mencken, the guy that did My Grandmother's Hands, that did a
Okay.
lot of I'm going to be doing some training with him. I did some this year, but I'm going to be doing some more with him next year, because for me, that's kind of my specialty. And I agree with
Right.
you. I think because we live under this system of racism, patriarchy, having all of those layers, and having to deal with the family of origin stuff as well, that's been intergenerationally passed down. Like, there's a lot of stuff,
There's a
a
lot
lot
of stuff
holding.
that people are holding on to. You
Yeah,
know, it's not just the racial trauma that they're holding on to. It's also things like sexual trauma,
yeah,
sexual abuse, emotional neglect, daddy not around, or
yeah,
mother suffering mental health problems.
yeah.
All of these things are part of the problem that people are holding on to,
Yeah.
and people muster through and think that they're going to make it, they're going to be okay, that they're not. They're struggling. They're literally struggling because they're holding on to all this stuff, and
Yeah.
it's time to really let it go. Let it go.
It really is. And something else I
Mm.
want to add to that as well, and it might be a little bit controversial. Okay. but don't come for me in the comments, okay, if I say this. But there's also this thing in the community that somehow, and this maybe it's a generational thing as well, that my parents' generation think we can just pray it away. You know, you can just pray this stuff away.
Nonsense.
And I'm sorry, but it is a nonsense. You can
It's a nonsense.
your spiritual faith and go to therapy. You can do both.
You can do both. And this was the problem, because I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Okay. And I couldn't understand why, even though I was praying, I was reading the Bible, I was doing all of that stuff, yet I still felt deeply, deeply depressed. And they would say, oh, speak to the elders. I'd speak to them. They didn't know what to do. They weren't equipped. And luckily, I because of a family emergency, I then went into therapy. And a lot of the witnesses were talking about it, thinking that I shouldn't be doing therapy. I should be able to solve my problems within the time. Well, I'm just glad that I did not listen, because in therapy, it opened my eyes to so much. It started to uncover all the things that were just being suppressed. You can't just keep praying and praying and not doing anything about it. We have to take action. We have to take action. This is, you know, being a Christian isn't about just relying on God or Jesus. If you really are a true sort of Christian, you actually start to take action and you do the shadow work, because at the end of the day, you're striving to be Christ-like, which means you are hoping and moving towards being the light in the world. And in order to share your light, you have to get rid of the darkness. You have to look at your shadow stuff. So all this praying it away, leaving it to God, is lazy. It is being lazy. So people can come for us in the comments. Don't care. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about.
Be clear as well about what therapy is, because people can think that, you know, healing this stuff is maybe going to your pastor or just sitting down with a friend. It's not the same as therapy. Okay, therapy is not sitting down and having a chat with your friends about what it's not. Okay, it's something that, you know, we train for years to do. Okay, it's a skill. It's a professional thing that you know, it's a skill. It's not just you coming into the session and then having a chat. It's not. That's not it. You know, there are so many different methods and ways of working with therapy, working in therapy. And, you know, some of the methods that I use is I use like what I designed, like called an empowerment triangle. So there's 3 different sides to it. And I work with the client to understand the relationship with self. Okay. One corner of the triangle, the relationship to whiteness and relationship to others. So we look at the family of origin stuff. We look at, you know, that history. We look at how society as a whole, the system of racism, how that impacts the person, and then and then we look at the relationship with self, like how they feel about themselves, how they feel about their blackness, and all of that. And within that triangle, obviously there's a lot within each of those points. But if I'm working within that triangle, I can guarantee that that person is going to be able to have more of an not just an understanding, but to be able to process.
Absolutely, and that's what it is.
It's all of those parts.
Yeah, it's about processing. It's also about becoming a lot more aware of your thoughts, how you manage your feelings and your behaviors. What is driving all of that underneath? And so when you're seeing a therapist, you get challenged. You get challenged because you think that, oh, I do this and I'm okay. Or you think you're okay. You know how many clients have come to me and they thought that their childhood was okay. But when we actually, and I just sit back and think, you think it was okay.
Okay.
But you're here. You are here. And so unpicking it is part of the process. And we're not here to blame parents, okay? When people come into therapy, it's not about blaming parents, but it is about acknowledging what went wrong. What did you not get that you needed as a child growing up? And really starting so that you can start taking responsibility. You know, even the simple thing, I've had so many clients who have been told, you're too sensitive, even by their parents.
Oh my
And
God.
I got that as well. You're too sensitive. So when you tell a client that, when you tell a child that you're too sensitive, you're actually telling them that there's something wrong with their emotional makeup.
Yeah.
And then that child will hide that part of themselves, a major part of themselves,
Yeah.
and try and manage through the world. It's no wonder they feel suicidal.
Yeah. Because the
Because
only way that
they
they're
grow
allowed
up
to
thinking there's
be,
something wrong.
yeah, yeah, they're not allowed, being themselves then becomes unsafe. because
Absolutely.
because the dialogue then becomes, if I'm allowed to be myself, then I'm going to get rejected, I'm going to get abandoned.
Right. Right.
I'm going to get abandoned if I'm allowed to be myself. And so
Absolutely.
we so many of us, we end up hiding who we are, and that's how we end up so codependent as well, because then it sets up a pattern
Yes.
of, I'm not, if I'm in a
Yes.
relationship, then I'm not allowed to be myself. So if you think
Mm.
about that, if that's happening within the family, and then that's also happening in society, because as Black people, we're also not allowed to talk about our pain. We're also
Mm.
not allowed to celebrate who we are as Black people. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that element of as well. So if we're getting it externally and internally, it then
Yes.
makes sense that it then becomes painful. It becomes
Absolutely.
painful because there's no safe place for us.
Right. Right. Yeah.
There's no safe place for us.
Yeah. And when you think about men,
Mm.
we live in a society where men are not supposed to cry. Big boys don't cry. And if a boy starts crying, he gets reprimanded for it. Or you need to be a man. I watched a Netflix movie which was entitled Big Boys Don't Cry, and it was about a white guy, but it doesn't really matter in this context, and how he had suffered so much abuse in a children's home, but he shared his story. It was so powerful, and I recommend men watch that, because too many men are sitting on secrets. Too many men carrying a lot of shame around some of their experiences, because I think it's easier for women to talk about sexual abuse, but for men,
Yeah.
it's not easy. And I wonder why. I not wonder. I got a feeling that this is why a lot of men, the statistics for suicide is higher in men, because they're
Yeah.
sitting on a lot of trauma, and they are just trying to muscle their way through, getting on with life, pretending it didn't happen. And they've got a lot of anger, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt beneath all of that. So I implore the men in our community to get help, to stop pretending, to take off the mask. You are safe in the hands. Find a therapist that you feel safe with, that you can open up and just release all that shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, for the brothers out there that are thinking about therapy, there's a couple of things that are important to think about as well, because I worked with one brother who, he was very, and he was he was abused, and it was really, I remember him saying to me that I was the first Black woman who'd ever shown him empathy. I was the first. I was the first Black woman who'd ever shown him empathy, and it is difficult for Black men. It's very difficult for Black men because of what you said, and I think that to think about if you're going to work with a woman, how is that going to compare, or how is that going to relate to your relationship with your mother? So if when you're choosing a therapist, think about how that connection is going to happen, how is that going to impact the relationship. And then if you choose to work with a man as well, how is that going to impact the relationship as well. So there's a lot of dynamics to kind of think about if you're a
Mm,
black man.
mm,
You know, if you're a black man
definitely.
who was abused or rejected by your mom, maybe you want to choose. Maybe you want to think about working with a man, with a black
You're a
man
man. Yeah, yeah.
first. You know,
Yes,
just so you get
yeah,
used to how therapy works. It does take time because people, you
yes.
know, when I first started therapy, I didn't really know anything about how therapists are supposed to behave. Now I
Mhm.
realise that there's a lot of shit out there as well. To be fair,
There,
to be
there,
honest,
there are a lot of very unethical therapists
yeah,
out there. A lot of therapists who aren't very good.
yeah,
And this
can't hold space.
they can't hold
Can't
space.
hold
And
space.
again, it's because they haven't done enough of the work themselves.
Mm,
Because I always remember in my training, you can only take your clients as far as you've gone.
exactly,
So if you
exactly.
haven't dealt with some of your stuff, I remember in one of the classes we talked about we were talking about would you work with a paedophile? I was like, no way would I work with a paedophile.
Mm,
No, because of what they've done and how they are. I was like, and I had to really process all of that stuff. And
mm,
and it was because I hadn't completely dealt with my abuse.
with your own stuff,
The
yeah.
more I worked on it, the more I worked on it. I actually have worked with a couple of paedophiles when I worked
Yeah,
in
me
the
too.
prison. In the
Yeah,
prison,
yeah.
they're not very nice to work with. I'm not going to lie, because they're very
Mm,
manipulative. However, because I was able to heal my stuff, I was able to work with them.
yeah, yeah,
So, so therapists again, yeah, keep doing the work. We have to still
yeah,
keep doing it. The work doesn't stop. We have to keep going.
yeah. And if anyone out there has had a difficult, you know, experience with a therapist in the past, don't give up.
Don't give
Don't
up.
give up. You know, keep looking because there are
Yeah.
more black therapists out there that are culturally competent, that are doing this
Yes.
work, that are doing the
Yes.
reading, that are going over and above and doing extra, you know, extra. I have spent thousands of pounds doing extra training and
Yes. Yeah.
reading, you know,
Yes.
on you know, getting support on how to hold space
Hmm.
in a more culturally competent way for
Yes.
people. So
Absolutely.
don't be put off if you've had a bad experience with a
No,
people.
don't.
Keep looking.
Keep looking, because I think it's far too easy to say, I saw a therapist and they weren't good, so therapy isn't for me. Don't have that. Don't have that attitude. I please, I don't have that attitude, because that's just one person out of many. Okay,
Yeah,
and just keep going. Just keep going.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So just going back to the some of the bullet points that I put down, some of the other stuff that
Mm.
maybe might be interesting to talk about is what can we do? Say for an example, you know, what can we do, or what can we do if we've got friends that are feeling suicidal? How can we support friends that are you know that are in that state?
If you feel able to hold space for them, then hold space for them. If you
Mhm.
can't, find someone who can,
Yeah.
or help them to find a therapist.
Mm,
You could offer that assistance.
yeah.
You could you could, because if they're depressed, they're more than likely lacking motivation. So
Mm,
you could do certain things for them, like practical things, maybe cook a meal, take
mm,
take them out for a walk, tidy their house. Just, you can
yeah.
do practical things. If you can't hold space mentally and emotionally, do some practical
Mm,
stuff
yeah. And be
and
honest with them.
encourage
Say, look,
them. Yeah,
I can't hold that space for you. I can't
yeah.
hold that space for you. But I will help you
Hmm.
find someone who can.
Absolutely.
You find someone who can, because what you want to do is reduce. You want to you don't want to reduce, increase the shame from that person that's feeling that way. You don't
Yeah.
want to say, you don't want them to think that you want them to shut down
Yes.
from expressing it, because actually a lot of times people think that if you talk about suicide that it makes people want to go and do it, but actually the opposite is true.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
opposite is true if you give people the space. But if you can't hold the space, and there's no shame in admitting that to that
Mm.
person, so I can't, you know, you really need to speak to a therapist. I will help you find someone.
Yes.
I
Yes.
will help you find someone that can do it, that can help you do it,
That's it.
you know.
That's it.
And Yeah, and if you can find you know, a therapist, a culturally competent therapist that can help you work through it. They can do a risk assessment and all of that stuff that's really going to be able to help you to be able to do that. Do a crisis plan, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
You know, so you can
yeah.
help them. And I think what you said is really good. Help them with the basics, the food, the getting out in nature. And sometimes it's not always about talking. Sometimes just sitting with them.
Yeah, just sit. You know, going out in nature. One thing that I would highly recommend when you go out in nature is to, when you're feeling low, hug a tree. Hug a tree. And I know this might sound woo-woo to some people who are not used to nature. It's called Mother Nature for a reason.
Yeah.
It's got that mother energy. And the tree, you can approach a tree and you can just let it go.
Yeah.
The tree will hold that space for you. You'll be very surprised. Very surprised. You know,
I think people
sometimes we have to
the
try
power.
something different. Sorry?
I was saying people underestimate the power of nature.
They do. And sometimes we have to try something different. You know, we know what insanity is. It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So try something different.
Yeah.
Try something different.
Yeah. And it's also about remembering that there are two parts to this. You know, if you're having suicidal thoughts or even if you're having difficult feelings, there are two parts. There's the work that you do in therapy, okay, and there's the work that you do outside therapy. The two have to come together. The therapist alone can't make it happen.
No, because your therapist is not your healer. Your therapist is your facilitator. And you have to put in the work outside of therapy. You can't just come and offload and then go out and don't change anything. That's not going to work. That's not going to work.
Right. The work that you do outside is just as important. So I would also say that the work that you do outside therapy, nature, and it is an amazing tool, like you said, Yvonne, with the tree and all that. Somebody else is saying about getting a stick, digging the earth, put your bare feet on the ground. I love all of those as well. Very grounding.
Yes.
Very grounding.
Yes. And when the weather improves, lie on the grass, man. Feel that. You can literally feel the earth move under you if you're that in tune and that connected.
Yeah.
And it holds you.
As well, being out in the sun when we get it in the UK.
When we get it, yeah.
Yeah.
And the sea, when the weather's nice, or if you can go abroad. Sometimes, if you have the money, go abroad. Go into the sunshine. Go into the sea. Also very healing. Very healing.
Yeah.
And I think actually living in these built-up cities isn't really what it's supposed to be. I actually feel that we should be living in different types of environments, more naturistic. I really do. It's much better and easier on the psyche. You know,
it's very claustrophobic, I think, especially in London. Everything's built up. You know, everyone's kind of on top of each other. The energy is kind of a bit erratic, and then you've got all that kind of. It's kind of like a capitalist, like I don't know what it is, but it's just, you know, it's this. The energy is very intense.
It is. You know? I don't live in London anymore, and when I do come into London, I so feel the difference. I so feel the difference, and I'm not even that far away from London, but it is very intense with all what's going on right now. It's a shit show out there.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that a lot more people might be feeling suicidal, actually, because they're probably thinking, what is going on in this world? I can't cope anymore. It's too much.
I think it's important to not underestimate how much of an impact all of that stuff that's going on in society, how much of an impact it has on us. You know, I think if we just look what's happened over the last few weeks, okay, we've had DJ Switch, okay, take his own life. We've had the onslaught of the whole Meghan Markle, Jeremy Clarkson nonsense. Okay, we've had the Ngozi Fulani situation with her going to the palace and getting abused by all of that. We've got the cost of living crisis. You know, we've just finished Christmas and New Year's, which is very, very difficult time for a lot of
It
people, you
is.
know, being
That's
around
the time when,
dysfunctional families and all of that. So if you think about all of those things,
yeah.
okay, and you have to really, this is where the awareness comes in. You've got to be so aware to understand, okay, my nervous system doesn't like this environment.
So why
My
put yourself
nervous,
in the environment?
exactly. Whether it's on social media or whether it's with family members or people that you just don't want to be around, you know, and let's not forget, you know, let's not forget that there are a lot of family members, there are a lot of families out there that are still ignoring the abuse that happened to a lot of us, okay, that are still inviting uncle whoever that abused
Listen,
so and so. That bullshit needs to
that,
end.
let me tell you something. That is a nonsense. And I feel that a lot of people, and I'm going to actually start being a lot more vocal about this on
Yeah, but
on
that's
social media, because it, you know, words kind of fail me, because it's such a
yeah.
nonsense. It's disgusting. It's awful. Can you imagine? Oh,
Mm,
just forget it. Forget about it. Forget
yeah,
about it. It's
yeah,
caused you so much trauma. It's affected your relationships, and it's
mm,
affected your relationship with yourself. No, we
yeah,
cannot forget about it. It has to be, it has to be spoken about. People need to be more vocal about what they've experienced, so that
mm,
this what do you call it? This nastiness, this disgusting behavior
mm,
stops. We're here to break patterns,
that's
family
tough.
patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why, you know, it makes sense why people feel suicidal, why people feel like they don't want to live
Yes.
anymore, because they're having
Yes.
to hold all of this stuff and then go and have to sit and break bread, expected to sit and break bread with people that cause that pain.
Yeah.
You know, this is why I'm such an advocate for people building a family of choice. Okay,
Absolutely.
people need to build a family of choice and making
You
decisions
do.
about, you know, who they are gonna keep in their life and who they're not going to keep in their life, who are they going to
Yeah.
love from a distance and who they're not going to love from a distance,
Absolutely.
because
It's very
it's making
important.
us as a community ill.
It is. It is.
That's
You
ill.
can't. It all the secrets and this sense of duty to your elders. Honor thy father and thy mother, so that it will go well in your. Listen, you can't honor a father and a mother who
Mm,
will not take responsibility for any abuse
yeah,
that was peted out to you as a child. So
yeah,
many of us, I mean, this, I'm talking about really deep abuse, but even like so many of us, even the comedians, they always make jokes about the beatings
yeah,
that we used to get and how
yeah.
we laugh it off. And we
It's not fun.
forget that actually that's trauma. It's not funny. It's
Yeah,
not funny. And things like, why are you crying? I'll give you something to cry for.
yeah.
I,
It's not
I
funny.
I've heard parents say, I brought you into this world and I can take you out.
Mm,
I think that's
yeah,
disgusting. How can
yeah,
you talk to your child like that? Your
yeah.
precious gift, and you think it's okay to say that?
Mm,
All these things cause trauma,
yeah.
especially if you're a sensitive child.
Mm.
So
And
the
this is
older
all a
generation need
reflection.
to pick up. Yes.
Yeah, this is all a reflection of the trauma that's been passed down intergenerationally. It's not an excuse, but you can
No.
see, you can understand. This is again, this is what why therapy is important. You know, having a
Essentially.
safe space to be able to unpack this stuff.
Yes.
Because you need to be able to see, you need to be able to own what happened in your family. You know,
Yeah.
at one point I always say, put the race stuff aside for the minute. We need to deal
Mm-hmm.
with what actually happened within your
In the
family.
family.
what,
Yes.
what happened there, and
What
then you can look
happened?
at it contextually.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
otherwise it then becomes an excuse. Oh, I'm not going to deal with it because, you know, my mum was traumatized as well, or my dad was traumatized, or, you know, it's white supremacy, it was rape. We know all of that, but how are you going to heal your wounds if
Yes.
you're always going to make excuse for
For
what your
them.
mum, or, you know, oh, she did the best she can. Well, we know she did the best she can,
We know
but
she did, but it was
screw her.
rubbish. Right? It. And that's the thing. I have a joke with my children. I did the best I could with the tools I had. And they laugh about that. And we can laugh about it because we talk about
Mm,
the family of origin that they were born into and the family of origin that I was born into. And
yeah.
so they're doing their work themselves. But yes, our parents did do the best they could with the tools they had.
Mm.
But a lot of our parents, their tools were rusty or they were non-existent.
And you know what? Both can be true. I always tell my clients this. Your parents can do the best that they knew how to, and it can still not be enough.
Of course.
It doesn't have to be either or, because I think that's where the torment is. They think,
Yeah.
oh, I don't really think that I have the right to be upset with my parents because they put a roof over my head and they put food in my belly. So I don't I shouldn't really have don't really have the right to feel depressed or upset because I didn't, you know, because my emotional needs weren't. Your emotional needs weren't met, and that's a basic fundamental need
Basic need for
as human
human,
beings.
absolutely, absolutely. And we're not trying to blame them, but you have to start looking at, why are you here? Why are you struggling? Why are you suffering? Why are you depressed? Why are you anxious? Why can't you hold down a decent relationship? Why are you codependent? Why do you have sex addiction? Why are you addicted to porn? Why do you take drugs? Why do you
Amen.
drink
All
alcohol
of that. Why do you
excessively?
keep self-sabotage?
All of that.
All of
That's
it.
why you're here. Yeah. Let's look at all of that.
Yeah.
Let's look at all of that.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're gonna. This is not about, like you said, it's not about blaming parents and going there and cussing them out. It's not about that.
No,
It's
no.
about understanding the patterns,
Yes.
and you reclaim your power by
Yes.
focusing on what you can control. You focus on,
Absolutely.
okay, well, what's my part in all of this? Have I enabled my parents in any way? Have
Mm-hmm.
I enabled their
Yeah.
behavior? Do I keep going back? Am I in fantasy
Mm-hmm.
about their behavior? Am I making excuses for their behavior? That's where
Yes.
your power
That's a
is.
good
It's
point.
that stuff.
Yeah. And
In
that
that
is a
stuff.
really powerful point that you made there, June. Am I in fantasy about my parents and do I keep going back? Because that is something that we can do as adults, because the little child in us is still seeking that validation, that love, that acceptance
Yeah.
from the parent. But you can't fix it like that. You got to reparent yourself.
Yeah. 100%. And you know what? I'm going to say something else a little bit controversial as well. And it always shocks people when I say it, but actually it's the truth. I actually believe, because of our history as well, that a lot of us don't actually love our parents. We're actually trauma bonded to them.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
a difference
Listen,
between loving somebody and being trauma bonded to somebody, you
I'm
know?
telling you, that is it is bang on. And I was talking about this 2 days ago, how there's a lot of women who are trauma bonded to their dads. They
Oh
don't
my God.
understand why, because somewhere in their psyche, they cannot remember consciously or cognitively that their dad abused them sexually. And it's called a trauma bond. And
Yeah.
with that trauma bond, you are so loyal to your dad
Yeah.
and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
But when you start to dig deep, you realize it's a trauma bond with your dad, and
Yeah.
it's so unhealthy and it doesn't serve you.
Yeah.
And
And
I have
all of
had
that
that
stuff gets acted
experience.
out in relationships then as well, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. So thank you for saying that. Actually, you think you love your parent, but it's a trauma bond.
Yeah. And as I said, to put it in context, it's about the stuff that's gone on with the fact within the family of origin, and also the context is as well. We have to think about how that's been passed down from the plantation, because
Yes,
that's how we've been taught, you
yes,
know.
yes,
And also, just going back to just kind of echoing what you were saying about the sexual abuse thing and the thing around the dads, we have to also remember that on the plantation, okay, or I should say the breeding farms, you have to remember that
breeding farms.
family members
Yes,
had to mate with
other
whoever.
family members. Yeah,
They would put bags on their heads
yes,
and you have to mate with whoever. So it could be a granny, it can be a child, it can, and I think
Yeah.
that's how that all that stuff
That's
has
how
been
that is
passed
being
down.
perpetuated. Definitely, definitely. Because some people think it's quite normal, actually.
Yeah, which is why
But
I think a lot of the there's a lot of enabling that goes on, and
yeah,
people not talking about it, and why uncle
yeah,
whoever or this person is still allowed to come and sit and break bread, because
yeah.
that behavior, because that's what they had to do back in the day,
Mhm, mhm,
and you
mhm.
can't tell me that stuff has not been passed down.
Yeah, it's been passed down, and the cycle needs to break. It needs to stop because it's not normal. It's not healthy. It causes a lot of pain.
Yeah, it does cause a lot of pain. So I'm just
Mm.
reading some of the comments. Somebody put, "Hey June, could you recommend a good resource book? Was it sit for Junior Graham's work that take into consideration slavery, colonialism, racism?" Ooh, that's a big one. I would say my grandmother's hands. I would say Reshma's work is really good, but his work is kind of more around understanding racism within the context more than I would say the family of origin stuff. Um, if you go to my, if you click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. There's a book list in there. So you'll find some stuff in there as well that's really good. And if you email me, let me have a think about it. And I can really put you onto some, onto some really good stuff, onto some more books. But I need to have a think about it because obviously the fact that I have to think about it means there's not that much out there at the minute. That's what's interesting. The
Mm.
fact that I'm going to have to sit and think about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
There's not enough stuff out there that's actually talking about it.
right.
Which
Maybe
is
that's the
why.
book for you to write, June.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe for sure, because there
Yeah.
isn't. I can't think off the top of my head of a book or something that's got something like that that's got a cultural context within that talks about the family of origin and white supremacy within that context. But here's the thing.
Mm.
Here's
Mm.
the thing. Here's what I would say. I don't think that work can really be done in a book.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
reason why I say that is this is the power of community. All right. There's certain, okay, you do your self-care and all the rest of it, you do your meditation, all that stuff is fine. You do that on your own. But there are certain types of work that you either need to do it with a therapist or you need to do it in a group. You need to do it in a therapeutic
Yeah.
group.
Setting.
Because
Yeah.
I think that stuff like that is so intense. You need to
Yeah.
be helped. And
Yeah.
this is actually where group work can be really powerful. I mean, the ladies that I work with, we talk about all of this stuff. We really go
Mm.
deep. But what's powerful about a group is that there's the identification.
Yeah. It is
There's
powerful.
there's the identification. There's the empathy. There is nothing more powerful. And there's been times where I've actually felt quite tearful
Mm.
in group. When I've been
Mm.
holding space for
Oh,
others in a
mm.
group. And people start to share their stories and somebody else will come up and say, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that felt like that.
Mm.
It was really good. And people that are in so much shame about what happened to them. And then they sit in a group and hear other people sharing and they just lose it. The tears and
Yeah.
because they're hearing their own story for the
They're
first
in
time.
their own story. Group therapy is very powerful, very, very powerful, because it will help you see you are not alone. You are
Yeah,
never alone. And so you can start to really release the shame that you're carrying around whatever it is you're carrying,
yeah.
because so many people have been through very
Mm,
similar stuff. I talk about the human condition, all the stuff that we've been talking about today, June. A lot of it is the human condition, the
yeah.
human programming, the human experience that we've
Mm,
all gone through something.
yeah.
We've all gone through it. If you come here as a human, we've all been through something. So
Mm,
we are never, ever alone. And I think if that's one thing that people can take away today, is to remember that you're never alone.
mm,
Because that's when you really do feel suicidal, when you feel alone.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's the isolation and the shame.
Yeah,
Oh my God, those two together is just so toxic.
yeah,
The
yeah,
shame and isolation together
yeah,
is just
yeah.
like you just can't. The shame keeps you silent, you
Absolutely. It
know.
keeps you silent. Talk about the shame. Talk about and actually the shame that you're carrying isn't even yours. It's
Yes,
not yours. It is the
that.
perpetrator. Give it back. Give it back. When you start talking about the shame, when you name shame, it, it releases so much within you.
Yeah, it can't survive when you speak out. When you speak,
Nope.
all of those
Nope.
things, you
Uh-huh.
know. And this is the thing that I feel really humble about as a therapist when I
Mm.
see somebody, because it takes guts.
Mm.
It takes guts for people to say, to
What
speak
it
about
is.
things. Yeah, and I know some of the stuff that you've been through as well. You know, it takes guts, and I know
It
you've
does.
written books. You
Listen,
book on.
yeah. Do you know, I remember when I first started going to recovery, um, and speaking in groups. That's the first sort of time I started speaking in groups, and being in rehab, speaking in group therapy, and it was really hard, but it was good because
Painful.
I heard other people talk about their stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah, I wrote my book, my first book, Hungry for Love. It
Mm,
talks about trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and how I've released it. Yeah.
yeah, it's so important. It's that identification.
Mm,
But you know, and this is why, you know, like you said, group therapy is so important. But you've got to be able to keep searching until you find a group that really works for you. Because again, there's a lot of
yeah.
people out there that are doing, you know, that are doing well-being groups that maybe they're not qualified therapists, or they can't hold space. You know, you don't necessarily have to be a
Mm,
qualified therapist to hold space, but you know, you've got to go and try things and see if you feel.
absolutely.
Do you feel safe? Do you feel
Absolutely.
safe?
I might,
Sometimes it's too
yeah,
big.
yeah. Sometimes they're too big to hold. Yeah, because yeah, yeah. And if they're too big, you need two therapists to hold that space. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I might actually think about holding a group therapy space
Mm,
for people as well. Um, I do workshops, but the
mm,
regular group therapy might be a thing to kind of offer as well, especially
yeah.
for especially for those who can't afford the one-to-one,
Yeah. Well,
isn't
that's
it?
what. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important because, you know, that's another issue, isn't it? If you are having suicidal thoughts, if you're struggling with big emotions, you know, what do you do if you can't afford therapy?
Mm,
And that is an option. Actually, is to find someone
that's it.
that does group
Yeah.
therapy. You
Yeah.
know, I know people might think, oh
Yes.
God, I don't want to go and talk my business out in front of others, you know, because there's that stigma as well in the community, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I don't
There
want to
is.
at my business. That's what it is, isn't it? People say don't chat your business. So there's a stigma around. Well, I don't really want to go and talk to other people. Oh, and for me, it was like I don't really want to go and sit with a whole lot of white people and talk in recovery because I had to do
Mm,
that. You know, I was
mm.
so desperate at the time
Oh yeah.
to to, to,
Yeah.
to do this work. I just thought, you know, at the end of the day, I just thought I don't care. But at
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
time, I wasn't talking about the race stuff. I hadn't done enough of the
Okay.
race work yet. So I was just talking
Right.
really about stuff. So that was
Yeah.
okay. But when I
Yes.
started talking about race in
Mm-hmm.
recovery and all of that, that's when I was like, no, 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 I'm not doing this in front of white people. It's not
Right.
safe.
Yeah.
Because they
It's not
would get
safe.
bent out of shape. Yeah, they would get bent out of shape about stuff. So that's when I started doing a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, help setting up meetings and all that sort of stuff to be able to have those
Sure.
conversations. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, so it's about finding your tribe. It's about
Yeah.
finding your tribe. For anybody that is in recovery or thinking about recovery, or anything like that, I do have there is a thing on my website actually. If you go to my website, go to the services tab, and there is a tab there that you know, where I talk more about recovery and what that means and all that sort of stuff for Black people. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I think community is really important. If we're talking about suicide within the context of preventative care, you know, you have to really think about what you're doing at
Mm.
home to take care of yourself. Because I think another reason, like what you were saying earlier, is that our emotions get, you know, because we're not expressing our emotion, we're holding them.
Yeah.
We're holding them, and it's like
Yeah.
a pressure cooker.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you don't embrace your emotions, or you haven't done so since you were a child, imagine how many emotions are inside of you. They are all still in there.
Yeah.
And you
It's
keep pushing
scary.
them down, push. And I know in our community, a lot of people smoke cannabis as a way of pushing things down. And
Yeah.
cannabis seems to be so accepted in the world. But
Yeah.
people are using it for the wrong reason. It's a sacred medicine. It's a sacred plant medicine. And they're using it for the wrong reason. And it's no wonder many people are suicidal, or they can't hold down a job, or they can't hold down a relationship. They don't know what to do with themselves because all they're doing is just smoking and pushing it down.
Numbing it. It's numb. It's they're
Numbing
using it to numb themselves and then justifying it, saying that it's natural.
Yeah.
But really, it's pushing down pain.
Yes.
It's about pushing down
pain
pain.
has to be released. Your body cannot hold on to so much pain forever. And if you do, you'll end up dying early of something.
And I think that's
because the last manifestation of any spiritual, emotional, or psychological illness is a physical disease.
Yeah. And people really need to get that. Like, don't underestimate, you know, and just because you're used to holding on to it, it doesn't mean that it's that you're okay.
You're not okay.
I didn't realize how much pain I was in until I started doing the work because I was so numb.
And I'm going to say again, the last manifestation of anything emotional, psychological, spiritual, manifests as a physical disease.
Yeah.
So if you haven't dealt with all of these things, you will get sick, you will get cancer, you will get fibroids, you will get fibromyalgia, you will get IBS, all of those things and more.
Yeah.
And more.
Yeah. And just adding to what you were saying as well, you can't do the reverse in the sense that you can't eat kale and think it's gonna change it's gonna somehow impact your trauma. Okay, you can't do your healing work. The food part of it is one piece. Okay, but I see people getting really obsessed with all the food thing and thinking, oh yeah, well if I eat kale and you know all that sort of stuff, then it will be okay. And if I just have lots of yes, listen, I eat my sea moss.
Yes, right? Eat your sea moss, eat your kale, you do all that. You can do your yoga, do your meditation. All of these things are tools, okay?
Yes.
But you still have to look at the mind. The mind.
It's not shadow work.
It's mind, body, and soul.
In conjunction.
Absolutely. So many people get it twisted. They do spiritual bypassing. They sit there, they meditate, they do yoga, they go to gong baths, they sound baths and all of that stuff. They're lovely. Yeah. What about your mind? How is your mind functioning?
Exactly. What is your nervous system telling you something different? Because
right.
all of that spiritual bypassing or all of that kale is not going to do nothing for your nervous system if you've got trauma going on.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I remember before I started therapy, I was at that GP nearly every week for one thing or another. Stress, this, that. I had some gynecological problems, all these kinds of problems. Do you know, I hardly ever go to the doctor now.
Yeah.
Hardly ever.
Other way around. Yeah.
It's the other way around because I released a lot of the shit.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to do it from the inside out. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. And when we talk about the inside out, we're not talking about body, we're talking about mind. We're talking about the mind. It has to be all three. It has to be mind, body, and it has to be all three. You can't just focus on one and not the other.
We are holistic beings. We're not just our mind. We're not just our body. We're not just our soul or spirit. Everything. Do everything. Do everything. And do it with love and compassion towards yourself.
Mm.
Do it with love and compassion.
Yeah. Oh my
Take
God,
your
that word
time. You don't
compassion
have to,
is the
yes,
key word, because we're
it
still learning
really,
how to
really
have
is.
that. We're still learning how to
Compassion.
have that. Yeah, we don't know how to have it
Mm,
because the system is not compassionate to us.
no,
And a lot of us were raised in families that weren't compassionate to us.
no.
So we don't know how to have compassion for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having to learn that, you know.
Mm,
But I think, you know, anybody that's watching this that has had suicidal thoughts, is feeling suicidal at the moment, I'm hoping that this live is really going to give people some food for thought, and to really begin to understand, begin to put some of the puzzle pieces together to think, okay, it's now making sense why I feel like this, and
mm,
you know what I can begin to think about, some tools
mm-hmm.
to be able to look after myself outside of therapy, what I need to do, take responsibility for myself, and also
Mm,
what I'm going to do with others, i.e. therapy,
yeah,
recovery meetings, you know, or doing group therapy or whatever. And if
yeah.
you, you know, if you don't have money for therapy, okay, recovery is an amazing
Yeah, it is
tool,
actually. It
you know, and it's
is.
becoming less white middle class.
Yeah,
You know, a lot
yeah.
more black people are going to recovery now. And you don't, and it's not about drinking. It's not just about drinking.
Mm-hmm.
People think, oh, you're in 12-step recovery, you're an alcoholic. Honestly, there are recovery meetings for everything.
Everything nowadays, isn't there?
Everything,
Mm,
you know?
yeah,
There are recovery meetings for everything. And
yeah.
there is so much out there. So, you know, Google it. Again, look at my
Mm.
website if you want to look at my, you know, the stuff that I've got. And, you know, you've got your book, Yvonne, you know, your what's it called? Hungry for
The
Love.
Hungry for Love one, Hungry for Love. Yeah, you can get that on
Food.
my website.
Okay. Is that one
It's on
specifically about
Amazon,
food?
and yeah, I talk about food in there as well, food addiction.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize, that they've got an addiction to food. So yeah, books on my website, also on Amazon.
Yeah.
Mm,
So it's good to know all of that. But underneath all of that, underneath all of the ways that we act out, whether it's food or drink or sex or porn or whatever it is pain.
it's pain.
It's unresolved pain. So we're clutching onto other things.
Yeah,
You know, we're choosing to clutch onto all these other things to find a way to deal with the overwhelming pain that we're in.
yeah, yeah.
You
But we
know?
can't avoid the pain for forever. You can't avoid the pain forever.
Yeah. It's not sustainable,
Um,
things.
it's not sustainable, and also it's just, you're just existing. You're not actually living. You know,
Yeah.
you're just existing to try and suppress the pain. But when you get rid of that pain and you start living, it's a
Mm,
different experience. It's an
yeah.
amazing experience.
Mm,
It really is. So
yeah.
we
It's not
don't
just
have to
practical
suffer in
tools.
silence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's something about, you know, being in a group, working with somebody else, and knowing that somebody else has got you.
yeah,
And knowing that
absolutely.
somebody else still sees you as a human being, even though you've been subject to some difficult things that are shameful, you know, maybe you've done
Mm,
some things maybe you've abused yourself in
yeah,
many ways, but to be in a group with
yeah,
other people or with a therapist that really hears your story and is not not
yeah,
judgmental,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
that's how you begin to heal. Because
Mhm.
whilst many of us were traumatized in relationship, whether it's family members or your relationship to society or whatever it is, relationship to racism or whatever, the healing also happens in relationship.
Oh,
You need
yes.
to in relationship either with a therapist or someone like that who can really hold that space, and um that's how the healing begins, when
Yeah.
you learn to manage relationships in a different way
Yes,
with
absolutely.
support from someone else. Because what
Yeah,
happens in therapy is the therapist then becomes somebody, I suppose, like for some people it'll be like a pseudo parent or a pseudo big sister or whatever it is. And
yeah.
then when you come to therapy regularly, or the group, and you're with other people that are non-judgmental, that are empathetic, you then start to internalize that,
Oh, yeah.
so that
Uh,
you can
Now
start to
it's that.
yourself.
Absolutely. Do you know how many times some of my clients say, Yvonne, I was doing such and such, and your voice came through. I heard your voice.
That's how it
Yeah,
works. That's
that's how
how
it
it works.
works.
Till they can take care of themselves.
Yes, it's
You
about
know?
learning to take care of themselves. Yes.
Yeah. That's how it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
Somebody's just asked for the name of your book again, Yvonne. I don't know if you want to just post it in the comments.
It's
Um,
called Hungry for Love. I'll put it in the comments.
okay. Okay, great. So I'm just kind of mindful of the time. I can't believe you've been talking for over an hour already. So, so just to wrap up, I just want to share my final thoughts about, you know, for anybody that is feeling suicidal, has had suicidal thoughts, or is having just struggling with difficult feelings or whatever. I just want to say to you again that you're not alone, and there is
Mm.
support out there, and you don't have to do this by yourself. You don't have to bury your head in 25 different books. Okay, reach out. Okay, and you keep looking, you keep searching for what you need in terms of your healing process and your support
Mm.
until you find what you need. Don't stop until you get what you need. Don't stop until you get what you
Absolutely.
need, because you deserve it. And too many of us have been in pain around stuff for too long.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. So
I'm
final thoughts
just
from
putting,
you.
yeah, I'm just putting the Black and Asian Therapist Network details in the chat
Okay,
for
great.
people as well, their website.
Oh, there is one other
Yes.
website actually. I want to say, which I found specifically for Black men. Actually,
Oh,
Black.
lovely.
Yeah, it's
Lovely.
called findabalance.org. Okay,
Ooh. Let me
findabalance.org.
type that in.
Yeah, that specific website, excuse me, is for Black men. Black men support well-being. So if you're a Black man out there, and also, you know, I do work with Black men. I know my marketing is very much geared to Black women, but I do work with Black men as well. So
Yeah, like
you're a Black man, you know, looking for therapy or whatever, and you want to work with somebody, you know, I've got loads of content on my YouTube channel. So you can find loads of stuff. If you go to my website, actually, there's loads of stuff on my blog as well. So, you know, you can definitely find a lot of stuff there. So yeah, some really lovely comments on there, Yvonne. People saying thank you. Somebody else saying healing is
okay.
right here now, listening to the two professional Black women. Thank you so much. And so Yvonne, final
Thank
words
you.
from you.
Final word is love yourself enough to do the work.
Yeah.
Learn to love yourself. Self-love is being talked about a lot, but we underestimate what it really, really means.
Yeah.
Love yourself to do the work. This is the time to be doing the work now.
Yeah. There's
And I
so
love
many
you.
resources. Yeah. Yeah. I love my people, man, as well. I love my
Yeah,
people. Just let
yeah,
yourself be loved.
yeah.
You know, let yourself
Yes.
get help. Let yourself receive support. It's out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just got to look for it. You
Yeah,
just got to look for it. So thank you so
absolutely.
much, everyone, for joining. If you know anyone who, you know, would benefit from this live stream, please share it with them. You know, send
Yes.
a draft. So if you're having a bad moment or you're feeling upset or whatever, if you know, if you've been feeling suicidal, save this live. Okay. You can go to Yvonne's website as well. She's got loads of information. Do you put your website in, Yvonne?
I'll put it in. And
Okay.
you know what as well, as yes, definitely people, please do share this, because this is the time of year when people do actually start to feel suicidal,
Yeah.
up
Which is why I
until the
said,
first
which is
week
why
in
when I was,
January. Yes. So let's see if we can save lives.
yeah. Somebody else has put in, June, do you do mentorship on racial healing for therapists? Do you know what? It's something that I've been thinking about. I've spoken to a few therapists. I had a chat with a few therapists earlier on in the year actually, and they were saying that to me about that. So go to my website. Or do you know what? Send me an email. Send me an email. Make sure you're on my email list so that I can do that, because it is something that it keeps coming up for me to do it. So yeah, it's something that I've definitely been thinking about, is to put something together to mentor other for other therapists, especially therapists that are just newly trained as well, that are just coming
Yeah.
out of, you know, doing the standard training or whatever, that want more insight on cultural
Mm.
competency and all of that sort of stuff. because I think as a Black therapist, if you're not doing this work around cultural competency, you're going to struggle, because
Yeah.
clients are going to come to you because you're Black. They are going to.
But they're coming to us because a lot of them are coming to us because we're Black. You know, the majority of my clients are Black, and they love the fact that they can sit in front of a Black therapist. So as a Black therapist, we need to be culturally competent as well, exactly. So that we can help them go through their racial trauma. We have to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's standard. Yeah, it's standard now.
So, anyway.
And it's really important. So thank you so much. If anybody else got any other questions they want to ask, maybe you didn't feel comfortable to say to post it on the on the live, you can definitely send me a DM or send Yvonne a DM or send me an email, info@theartofgreatness.com. We will be happy to help. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good new year, however you choose to spend it. So just thank you so much for joining us live. Thanks for your comments and everything. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us live, and thank you, Yvonne, again for another wonderful session. Every now and then we come and do these live.
Yeah, we come together so often. Absolutely. Yeah. No,
it's really good. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
And I'll see you next time. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.